Hi guys, welcome to Windsome Cottage Garden. My name is Hannah and I'm so glad that you decided to join me today. We are in the cottage garden. And as I mentioned in my last video, this is finally part 2 of getting some things planted before the season has ended. It is quite late, I will admit that. It is November 4th today. Today is my sister Molly's 24th birthday. So happy birthday, Molly, even though you're seeing this a week later. Finally finishing the project we started a couple of weeks ago when I was trying to get a couple last things planted from our plant hoard and splits from the city garden. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Earlier this season, I actually moved from my house in the city. We were at the cottage garden, which is actually now where my parents live, but it's been our family cottage for quite some time. And I document both gardens. When I moved, I took a lot of splits and I also dug some plants that were part of my sale. Go see those videos if you want to know more. And I'm getting them planted. November 4th in Michigan is very late to be planting things. But you could probably tell from behind me, though they do have fall color and it's looking good, like things are looking amazing because they haven't had a frost yet. Now in the city garden, we also had not had a frost. And then on Halloween, we got 6.5 inches of snow in 2 hours, which is now gone. It melted. And I don't actually think we're going to be getting a frost there for some time. And looking at the forecast here, I think it's going to be a week or two before they get a frost. So I have time to get these in the ground, and it's better for them to be kind of planted than overwinter in pots. So actually last time when I started this video, I did get one thing planted before I had to stop because of the weather. Today is a glorious day. It's a bit chilly. I think it's only about 40, 45-ish, but there's no wind, or there's limited wind, which if you've seen any of our videos here at the cottage, there's almost always wind. It's why we call it Windsome Cottage. It's been an odd fall. I mean, my new house has kind of hijacked a lot of our normal fall routines. And now I'm scrambling to get a couple things done. What I do suspect will happen is what happened to the home garden, where I'm not seeing a frost based on the temperatures. So maybe a light frost, but we're not expected to really dip below freezing in the next 10 days. So I bet it's going to snow before it actually frosts. I still have blooms on my dahlias. It's looking great. We might end up cutting some at the end of this video and taking them into my mom, because I do want to cut them back a little bit to start encouraging them to start going dormant, because I want to dig those before it gets too cold to do so, because I think it's going to go from this 40-ish degrees not really frosting to 19 and snow. Pretty flipping a switch. So we're going to try and get this stuff done before that happens. I have that video I want to insert of something we planted last time, so I'll do that very first thing. And then we have one thing that we are sticking in the holding area, one thing that we are planting that was new this year, and one thing from my garden. So what I'll probably do is go through, get those all planted, and then show you what they look like at the end with what details I have. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, I am cutting into my montage of planting stuff to kind of talk about this area a little bit more. If you've followed my channel for some time, you know that this bed had some houtunia, a chameleon flower planted in it. It's a ground cover that is hugely invasive and noxious. The ground cover was recommended to us by a landscaper who helped build the walls, and quite frankly, I am shocked that they recommended it because it is awful. We have spent the last several years trying to eradicate it, and this last year we made a really big effort. We sprayed it, sprayed it, let it die back, put down some weed barrier and put a nice thick layer of mulch, and then all summer we have been spraying herbicides on it, like specifically Roundup that's supposed to go back and kill the root, and it has not died. We've just been doing rounds and rounds of that. It's definitely a lot less than it has been, but we've hesitated to plant anything in these areas because we didn't really want to. We wanted to try and eradicate it more before we planted. My dad and I had made the decision, since we did have a rose to be put in here that we bought some time ago, that we needed to get it in the ground. So what we talked about me doing was digging this hole and picking out all the roots. And I want to give you a little bit closer look because this is going to be a problem. And we've got some solutions in place for it, but it's disheartening, to say the least. So this hole is probably about 18 inches deep. I wanted to go deeper than I need. And the good news is I'm not seeing a ton of activity down here. However, all of these roots are houtunia. And this fabric is riddled with it quite badly. So I think at the very least, it's kind of pointless. And I regret now we have fabric that is riddled with this houtunia and isn't going to do a lot. So I'm actually wondering if one of the things that we want to do is use some like food grade plastic over the winter and spring and just go around the plants that are here and hopefully kill it out that way, smothering it for some time. Normally you'd want to do that for about 3 months to kill grass. I'm not sure if this is different. So I have some that I could talk to my dad about getting, and it might not be bad to do it over the winter and then maybe keep it on till like June. That would probably help more than this at this point. This is, I kind of want to rip it out now. I regret putting it in. But what I'm doing now for this rose that we do have to plant is I'm rucking up around, and I just got in my eye. I'm rucking up around the sides, and you can just see the root structure of this thing. This soil is nice. I did grab a bucket of the soil I pulled out, and I am gonna I don't know if you can see this. This is the soil I pulled out of the hole, very sandy. And what I'm gonna do before I start popping stuff back in is kind of filter through it, pull all the roots out, because these will all spring into separate plants. We just throw this away. We don't compost it or anything like that. We black bag it and put it in the trash. There's not much else we know how to do with it. So before I put this back in, I will filter through it and get all these bits and pieces out. You can see they're throughout it. But in the meantime, I almost need a second one of these. I am kind of going through and pulling and cutting some of these roots out to create a safety bubble around it. I need to dig some of this out, and we'll just have to go through it again in a bit. But that's what I'm going to do probably for the next 20 minutes or longer. So let's dive in. First thing that we put in was in our holding area. This is in the bamboo bed, which we intended to do an overhaul of this year and last year actually, and haven't gotten around to it, but it will be on the docket for next year, probably sooner rather than later. But for now, it's a pretty sheltered place for us to overwinter some things that we just didn't have a place for or weren't ready to plant quite yet. You might recognize this is an Annabelle, and this is an Annabelle that we took out of the city garden like in April. And it's going to go in this bed. It's just not ready for it yet. So what I did though is I actually dug like a shallow hole about the size of this bucket. This bucket is not ideal to be doing this because it's like a peat bucket, so it will break down. but I didn't really think it would be helpful to switch it to a different bucket at this point. It's in that bucket's days are numbered anyway, because they only last for so long. So what I did is I did a hole that was shallow, sunk that in, built some of the dirt up around it, and then also packed plants in. We have a couple more things up there that we'll do a different time. They need to come down into this holding area. And then one of the things we do once plants have died back a little bit more is we actually fill this with leaves to kind of insulate them. I'm going to have a video in the home garden soon talking about this process and kind of walking you through a couple different options that I myself am doing a little bit more, because I have a lot of plants I need to winter over this year. So if you want more details, make sure you check back and see that video. The next thing we planted was the rose. I did pop in the middle of it and kind of explain some of the problems we had in this area with some invasive ground covers, but I did end up planting this because it's probably better for it to be in its space than not. And my dad and I talked it over a couple times because we debated whether or not to plant it. I've got some ideas for some things we can try to see if it helps. But let me give you some stats on the rose that we did get in the ground. This is a Gabriel Oak rose, shrub rose by David Austin. We found it on sale at a garden center, and we're really excited about it. It is a zone 4 through 9, and we'll get 4x4. It has a beautiful pink bloom. It's rated best for flowering and best for fragrance, and it did have a flower on it when we bought it, and we could not resist. Eventually, we want to add at least one more rose here. And then if we look over in this space, maybe 1 or 2 roses here as well. This bed over there is actually a hammock bed. I don't know if I've ever shown it to you with a hammock in it, but these are hammock trees, so we want to keep that open. But I think it'll do well here. It's actually probably close to 4x4 width. It'll just bulk up a little bit. What we're going to have to do with the houtunia in this area, I think I might suggest to my dad the silage tarp idea. And then let me rephrase. When houtunia starts kind of getting into this space, what we will do is put on rubber gloves, disposable rubber gloves that are super thick, and get Roundup on our gloves, and then go in and just kind of touch the weeds we want to kill. I think that's pretty much what we're going to have to do. I actually can't lift this, so it's still here. I'm going to need my dad to do it for me, because I tweaked my back not too long ago, and I know that is beyond my limit right now. But what we'll do, I was going to use it to backfill and sift through. You might have seen me start with that. And then I said, you know what, why am I doing this and risking getting some of those rootlets in there? And I went and found some other dirt. Since it is the end of the season, you may have seen me scrounging for dirt. I used some that was like a potting soil that was very dry, so I do need to water this in well. And then I went and found some other soil that was a lot better. But I had to go to the other end of the property to find it and dig it out of a trough, and it was a trial. So in general, we usually pop the native soil back in. And I find that most of the time, even though you're adding soil, you can use almost all of it in the same space, maybe a little bit less, but not much actually doesn't go back into the hole. So we'll watch this and see if this was a mistake. But you live and learn. And I am glad that this rose is in the ground. It's actually been up on our deck all summer, and we really enjoyed it, but we intended it to go in the ground much sooner than it is. Next, I'm going to pop over and show you what the coneflower we planted last time looked like before showing you the last thing that we planted. At the time of filming this looked a little bit different. My dad has come in and done some fall cleanup in all of these areas. There's also a ton more leaves on the ground, but this is the coneflower we planted. It's like a pretty red one that's a little bit shorter, and I think it will be really nice in this area. There's some blue lupins, the red coneflower. We've got some orangey heliopsis, and lots of other things in this area that it will look nice with. You can see it had settled in well because we planted that, probably 3.5 weeks ago. So it's had more than enough time to settle in, and I'm hoping that the things we're planting today will also have that same time to settle in. We are at the last thing we planted. In this area, we already had some white spiderwort, and I had purple in the city garden, and we had a house 15 years ago, the house that I actually spent most of my childhood in, that we had a lot of this where the white and purple mixed. And my mom absolutely loved it. But they tried to take some and move some from house to house, and it turns out they'd only grabbed white. So when I bought purple when we were moving, my mom asked me to get a couple clumps so we could start intermingling it. Now I broke my clump into 3 and did it out a triangle, and this is all white in between. Over time they'll intermingle better. What I really should have done is like dug up and moved stuff together, but I didn't really feel like doing that. I didn't want to disturb this late into the season, and I think this will eventually get what we want anyway. I think that's really going to do it for this video. And those were the last 3 things that I really, really wanted to get in the ground before winter, both here and at my home garden. So I am thrilled that I was able to get that done. I'm going to start doing some Christmas decorations soon, which I like to bring you guys on, especially as we start getting into the colder months. Living in Michigan, there is limited things I can do outside. So I'll bring you in so I can keep posting a couple videos. And actually this year, I'll probably bring you inside the house as I work on some projects that may be of interest to you guys in terms of like painting, doing some gallery walls, and transforming the house in general. Those will be later this season, and we'll also talk more about the plans we have in the upcoming year. But for now, you might get to see Christmas soon. Since Halloween has passed its time, I'm usually a November 1st kind of girl, but I'll probably be at least a November 10th girl for Christmas trees this year. Anyway, I really appreciate you joining me today. If you liked this video, please make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.